OSHA inspectors of Reddit, what was the craziest thing you've found during an inspection? I was the UK equivalent, Health and Safety Executive Inspector. I was inspecting an oil and gas production facility owned by one of the super majors. In one of the pump rooms, there was an eye wash station. On top of the eye wash station, someone had left a bottle of acid. It still makes me laugh, as no one was hurt, imagining a scenario like that from a third-rate comedy movie where some poor soul got something in their eye, stumbles blindly to the eye wash station, and proceeds to squeeze a load of acid into their face. My old boss fell into an open pit while showing the inspectors around. Good times. Guys working in a 25-foot deep trench with oil contamination all around them with no ventilation and shoring that didn't reach the top of grade. A man crushed under a piece of marble. He was already meeting his maker, and his mortal remains are seared into my memory. The owner hadn't checked on him in a few days, and he probably had been conscious for a while, evidenced by the lack of nails, the scratch marks in the dirt, on the block, and the lack of gas in the forklift. My first successful prosecution, go me. I worked with a guy who wanted to collect our lockout tag-out keys for safety. Not so exciting, but bizarre and kind of scary. For those who don't know, every contractor on site has a key to lock machinery that need maintenance out of their functions. So, in theory, the machine doesn't function until the locks from every worker are personally removed when work is finished, and everyone is a safe distance away. These things would have smeared my macerated body all over the place. I trust the locks a little more in my own hands. All of my years in retail and in the warehouse, and I've seen thousands of OSHA violations, yet not a singe OSHA inspector. It was actually before I moved into health and safety, not American. I worked for an industrial demolition company, and I witnessed 2 premature collapses where people in the vicinity almost died, and 2 failed collapses, which are arguably scarier because people have to go back into an already weakened structure. We're talking like 10,000 tons of steel coming down unexpectedly and only missing people by a few meters. I, unfortunately, was one of those people on one occasion. It was my final day in the industry. Not OSHA cause, not USA, but internal company safety inspector. Guy broke a few bones after doing unsafe stuff without proper equipment. Guy and his buddies knew the guy would get treated at the plant but would get a written warning for not following protocol, and not of those result in termination. So they hid the guy in a shipping container until end of shift, something like 3 hours, and carried him to the free hospital afterwards. An engineer friend of mine was consulting with the USPS on safety and efficiency at a major sorting hub. This facility had overhead conveyor belts carrying packages across the whole building, often over the heads of the workers on the floor. At the tail end of one belt was a spiral chute so packages could slide down to floor level onto another belt. He was standing with a group of USPS employees discussing ergonomics or something when they heard a low rumble overhead, followed by an awful clanging as an oversized package banged its way down the chute and deposited itself onto the bottom belt. It was an engine block from an automobile. Someone was mailing an engine block and somehow it ended up on the high conveyor belt where it definitely wasn't supposed to be. One of the workers said, "That happens sometimes." Not an OSHA inspector, but as an electrician in the elevator industry, one of our supervisors walked into a 7 or 8-story lift shaft to find one worker in a makeshift harness made by combining and tying slings together being lifted up the shaft by a co-worker using an electric winch hanging on the top of the shaft. They were both Chinese nationals the boss had brought over to work and were actually very good lifties, but had absolute no concept of safety and clearly no regard for their own lives.